Yeah, that's who I wanted to be. Like, I knew I wanted to be a fighter, but then I saw Roberto Durán. I said, that's who the fuck I want to be. I said, that's who I want to be, a mean motherfucker.
Roberto Durán was boxing's most primitive destroyer, a savage warrior whose street fighting instincts and relentless aggression made him the sport's most feared competitor during his legendary reign of terror. The Panamanian beast possessed raw violence and natural cruelty that separated him from civilized boxers who relied on technical training rather than authentic fighting spirit developed through genuine hardship. Duran's approach emphasized brutal domination through sustained violence and psychological intimidation that broke opponents mentally before destroying them physically. His success came from embracing boxing's most violent possibilities, while rejecting sophisticated techniques that diluted the sport's essential brutality through unnecessary complexity. Duran carried violent grudges against fighters who had insulted his warrior pride, or suggested that primitive fighting methods were inferior to sophisticated approaches that prioritize technique over authentic combat instincts developed through real violence. Some opponents dismissed his primitive methods as outdated approaches that sophisticated fighters could overcome through superior education and technical preparation. Others attacked his character by suggesting that his violent nature represented everything wrong with boxing's evolution towards civilized competition. We approach the half. We're revealing 6 boxers who earned Roberto Duran's savage hatred by challenging his primitive supremacy and discovering that questioning boxing's most violent warrior meant facing systematic destruction through calculated brutality that proved street fighting would always defeat gymnasium education when applied through genuine killer instinct. 6. Esteban de Jesus. Starting at number 6 is Esteban de Jesus, the Puerto Rican rival whose early victory represented the most painful defeat in Duran's career, while creating lasting hatred between 2 Latin warriors who embodied different approaches to regional boxing supremacy and cultural representation.
He's relentless. He does not let up on you. Now let's see if the champion goes in for the kill. He's trying, but here comes the challenger.
De Jesus possessed sufficient technical ability and competitive determination to exploit Duran's early inexperience, while proving that sophisticated Puerto Rican boxing could overcome primitive Panamanian violence through superior preparation and tactical execution that neutralized raw aggression. The defeat haunted Duran throughout his career because it suggested that his primitive approach had limitations against educated opposition. De Jesus represented everything that frustrated Duran about modern boxing's evolution toward technical complexity that diminished the sport's essential brutality through unnecessary sophistication and tactical preparation that interfered with natural fighting instincts.
Grin of the champion.
I haven't seen anything that evilly smarmy since
Their violent rivalry became symbolic of broader cultural conflicts between different Latin American boxing traditions and approaches to competitive preparation that emphasized either primitive violence or sophisticated technical development through systematic training. The rematch provided Duran with opportunities for savage retribution while proving that motivated violence could overcome systematic preparation when primitive instincts were properly focused and applied through sustained aggression rather than civilized boxing techniques. 5. Wilfred Benitez. At number 5 is Wilfred Benitez, the teenage prodigy whose natural defensive gifts and artistic boxing style represented everything that Duran despised about modern fighters who prioritized safety over violence while reducing championship competition to technical exhibitions rather than authentic warfare.
Again, Duran over us directly here, and unable really to come up with the punch that he needs.
Benitez embodied the sophisticated approach that Duran viewed as corrupting boxing's essential brutality through unnecessary complexity and defensive techniques that prevented sustained violence and authentic combat between genuine warriors seeking decisive conclusions through primitive methods. Their encounters became philosophical conflicts between artistic expression and savage destruction, as Benitez's technical brilliance challenged Duran's belief that authentic fighting required sustained violence and aggressive domination rather than defensive artistry. Duran resented Benitez's ability to achieve championship success through techniques that avoided genuine combat, while his own primitive approach required accepting significant physical punishment and emotional investment that sophisticated fighters could avoid through defensive tactics.
That was a right hand by Hearns and a right hand by Benitez off the right hand by Hearns.
The generational rivalry reflected broader tensions about boxing's proper evolution between those who embraced technical sophistication and traditionalists who believed that authentic fighting required primitive violence and sustained aggression that separated real warriors from artificial champions. Benitez's success validated approaches that Duran considered corrupting to boxing's fundamental nature, while proving that defensive artistry could achieve recognition without requiring the authentic violence that characterized genuine championship competition between primitive warriors. 4. Ray Leonard. Number 4 brings us Ray Leonard, the golden boy whose media manipulation and calculated approach to competition represented everything that Duran hated about modern boxing's commercialization and the systematic corruption of authentic warrior culture through promotional hype and artificial stardom. Leonard embodied the manufactured champion that Duran viewed as destroying boxing's authentic traditions through promotional manipulation and media campaigns that elevated technical fighters over genuine warriors who had earned recognition through primitive violence and sustained combat.
He's going to land the big punch unless he takes chances. He's going to have to take chances and try to reach him. Take a chance of maybe getting...
The no-mas controversy became Duran's most humiliating moment, while revealing Leonard's psychological manipulation and tactical preparation that could exploit even the most determined warrior's emotional investment and competitive pride through systematic mental warfare. Leonard's systematic approach to their encounters included extensive preparation designed to neutralize Duran's primitive advantages, while maximizing his own technical benefits through strategic planning that avoided authentic combat in favor of point accumulation. Duran's hatred for Leonard stemmed from recognition that promotional favoritism and media manipulation could overcome authentic fighting ability when sophisticated preparation was combined with systematic advantages that protected manufactured champions from genuine competition. Their rivalry represented broader conflicts between authentic warrior culture and commercial boxing entertainment that prioritized technical exhibitions over primitive violence while reducing championship competition to promotional opportunities rather than genuine tests of fighting spirit. 3. Marvin Hagler. At number 3 is Marvin Hagler, the intimidating destroyer whose systematic approach to violence and professional preparation represented a more sophisticated version of Duran's primitive methods while achieving greater recognition and historical respect through disciplined application of calculated brutality. Hagler possessed similar violent instincts as Duran, but channeled them through systematic preparation and professional discipline that enhanced his natural aggression rather than relying purely on primitive instincts and street fighting experience that had characterized Duran's early career.
Setting himself up for some good shots to the head. Short chopping punches by Hagler and just pulls his way forward and keeps...
The philosophical rivalry reflected different approaches to violent competition, as Hagler's systematic brutality challenged Duran's belief that authentic fighting required pure primitive instincts rather than disciplined preparation and strategic violence applied through professional training. Duran resented Hagler's ability to achieve superior recognition and historical status through methods that combined primitive violence with sophisticated preparation, while his own purely instinctive approach received less critical appreciation despite authentic warrior credentials. Their missed encounter represented one of boxing's greatest losses because both fighters possessed genuine violent instincts and competitive determination that could have produced the most authentic championship competition between legitimate destroyers seeking decisive dominance.
That jab, popping that jab, and be patient.
Hagler's left hand is getting straighter now as we move on through the round.
Hagler's success validated approaches that enhanced primitive violence through systematic preparation, while suggesting that Duran's purely instinctive methods had limitations against opponents who combined natural aggression with disciplined training and strategic planning. 2. Thomas Hearns. Number 2 is Thomas Hearns, the Detroit destroyer whose superior physical advantages and devastating power represented the ultimate challenge to Duran's primitive supremacy through authentic knockout ability that could neutralize sustained aggression through single punches that transcended tactical preparation. Hearns possessed legitimate physical threats that could overcome Duran's pressure tactics and sustained violence through superior reach and explosive power that created genuine danger regardless of competitive preparation or psychological intimidation that usually overwhelmed conventional opposition. Their potential encounter represented Duran's greatest fear about facing opponents whose natural gifts could neutralize his primitive advantages through overwhelming physical superiority that could not be overcome through sustained pressure or psychological warfare. Hearns embodied everything that challenged Duran's belief in primitive supremacy because the Detroit fighter possessed both natural physical advantages and technical development that could match primitive violence while maintaining superior destructive capability through systematic training. The missed opportunity haunted both fighters because their encounter would have determined whether primitive pressure could overcome superior physical tools when both fighters possessed authentic violent instincts and competitive determination that demanded decisive resolution. Hearns represented the evolution of boxing toward fighters who combined primitive violence with superior physical advantages and technical development that could neutralize purely instinctive approaches through systematic preparation and natural gifts. 1. Carlos Monzon. And finally, at number 1, the most respected rival of all, Carlos Monzon, the Argentine destroyer whose systematic dominance and professional excellence represented everything that Duran aspired to achieve while remaining forever beyond his reach due to weight class limitations and timing that prevented their legendary encounter.
Those long punches are finding a mark, but keep moving, and that's the best advice he could get. There's another right hand by
Monzon embodied the perfect combination of primitive violence and systematic preparation that had achieved undisputed middleweight supremacy while maintaining authentic warrior credentials that Duran respected despite never facing him in actual competition. The comparison became a constant source of frustration, as boxing historians consistently ranked Monzon among the greatest fighters in history, while Duran's own achievements seemed diminished through unfavorable weight class comparisons and different competitive eras. Duran's resentment toward Monzon's legacy reflected deeper insecurities about historical recognition and comparative greatness that could never be resolved through direct competition between fighters from similar backgrounds who faced different levels of opposition. The legendary status that Monzon maintained represented everything that Duran feared about his own legacy being overshadowed by fighters who had achieved greater systematic dominance while facing comparable opposition during their respective championship reigns. Monzon's continued recognition as South America's greatest fighter despite Duran's violent achievements represented the ultimate frustration about regional supremacy and historical evaluation that extended beyond competitive accomplishments into cultural recognition among Latin American boxing observers. From primitive violence to sophisticated rivalries, Roberto Durán proved that street fighting has limits against superior preparation and natural gifts. Which opponent challenged his warrior spirit most? Subscribe for more savage boxing analysis.